start with the Arizona Cardinals in the NFC West. Another team I think that had a very good offseason so far. They were the beneficiary of a dumb trade the Texans made. They bring in DeAndre Hopkins, who arguably is the most skilled receiver in football right now, or if not, he's top 3. They only give up a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick next year, and a guy they were trying to get rid of anyway, in David Johnson, who got paid $13 million a year. And also they shore up the defense. A lot of the moves on defense are nice. Devondre Campbell, 1 year, $8.5 million. A guy that has good speed and can cover. Good man coverage guy. Devon Kennard, good versatile speed rusher. I don't know what type of defense they're trying to play. Vance Joseph has played hybrids in Miami and Denver in the past, so I don't know. And Jordan Phillips, a nose tackle type. Nice 3-year deal. He's not paid much. I think it's only $6 million, $5 million a year. So I think a nice offseason for Arizona so far.
Offensive line help is the number one priority that they need.
Absolutely. That's still the one area they have not addressed yet. You have to.
Where are they drafting?
They're number 8. They have to take a tackle.
They're going to get a tackle.
No matter who it is, whether it's Andrew Thomas, whether it's Tristan Wirfs, or Mekhi Becton, the kid from Louisville. They have to make sure they get one of those guys, even if it means trading up a little bit to try to steal him maybe from a Carolina Panthers that might need one, or the Chargers if they don't take a quarterback. If that means trading up a little to do it, do it. You have the extra draft stock now to be able to work with that. Make sure you have to get a tackle, because that line is really bad right now. And the rest of the team is not bad right now. They have running back, they have receiver, they have some good pieces on defense, so they really just need to get off.
Well, they stole a receiver.
Yeah, they did.
They stole a receiver.
They absolutely did. So yeah, that's Arizona. I think they've had a very good offseason so far. Let's go now to the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of small moves like we usually see from the Seahawks. They're a team very much like the Patriots. They don't really like to make a lot of big, splashy moves. They did in 2013 with the 2 pass rushers, Averill and Bennett, but beyond that...
We got a question before you go back.
Go ahead.
Niffin says, do you think there will be any surprise trades at the draft?
Surprise trades? That is interesting. You could definitely see... Like I said, I think Jacksonville and Carolina are both interesting wild cards. You could definitely see them both trade up and trade back. And again, it wouldn't surprise me that if they trade up for something that isn't a quarterback. Niffin, a month ago, I would have said Atlanta, and I wrote an article on that. Atlanta trying to trade up all in for Chase Young, but now with all they purged, I don't know if they can do that anymore. But again, don't be surprised if a team does that. All in for a player like Young or Simmons. It might not be for a quarterback. And I think, again, the teams to watch for that would be Jacksonville or Carolina for me, if I were to judge that. Maybe the Raiders, they do a lot of crazy things, so I don't know. Those would be the 3 to watch out for.
I would definitely look at Oakland. I mean, you've been hearing stories about Derek Carr. I don't know if they're 110% sold on Derek Carr, so maybe there'll be a surprise trade. I can absolutely see the New England Patriots make a trade for Derek Carr. And I could see John Gruden and Bill Belichick doing that. Derek Carr would fit perfectly in that offense. He really would. I don't know if the Raiders really, really love Derek Carr as their future quarterback. Now, the contract it works fairly for their salary cap and where they plan this team to be going to Vegas, but you just never know. I mean, you heard stories about Vegas probably going after Tom Brady, but $30 million a year was too much for them to handle. So watch out for Oakland. I could see Oakland making a trade, maybe trading Derek Carr. There are a couple of teams. I mean, you could go back and forth on who. Baltimore can make trades. Baltimore's going to try to move up because Baltimore believes that they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. They need to fill in certain spots that can make them a top organization, a top team, or another top team that they were last year. I think that they're fairly good team, so I think that there are other positions that they need to fill in. And if they think that there's a play that could be a game changer, a player that could be a game changer, watch Baltimore and Jaguars, especially the Jaguars.
They could do anything.
The Jaguars could do anything, so watch out for the Jaguars still.
All right, so Seattle for me, again, they've done a lot of small moves. They're a lot like the Patriots, where they don't make a lot of huge moves. Jaron Reed, we're bringing him back. Very underrated interior defensive lineman, 2 years, $23 million. I think the only reason it wasn't longer in terms of the length of the contract was because of the suspension he had last year for his, I think it was some drug issue that he had.
Was it you? Were you the drugs?
I am not the drugs, no.
Well, you look like a drug.
Of course you think
the ladies think that you were a drug.
Sure, we'll go with that. But again, everything else really just small moves. Greg Olsen, not a bad gamble. I mean, if you can get anywhere. You could get maybe even him playing just more than half the season at this point. It's gonna be a good move. I think he's a better fit than Jimmy Graham ever was there. Better blocker, and again, good just a security blanket type guy. BJ Finney, not a bad versatile lineman either. But again, everything else really is just small moves. In terms of the draft, they tend to like to trade back all the time, so it wouldn't surprise me if they did that again. They're going to have to keep addressing defense. I think they still need some help in that secondary and pass rush as well. Now, again, they're the team, unless they bring him back, losing Clowney. And Ziggy Ansah so far has been a bust as a pass rusher. He really didn't even play much for them at all. So they have a lot of big pass rush holes. Offensive line's been a big hole, and secondary, I think that's where they're going to go in. Receivers was a big hole for a while for them, but I think that's a little more shored up. Yeah, they had a better year from Lockett, a good year from Metcalf for the most part. So I think their offensive skill players for once are actually okay. So offensive line, D-line, and secondary is where I would focus in the draft if I'm the Seahawks. And again, there's a lot of good corner depth, a lot of good back-end safety depth where they can find late first, early second, especially if they do trade back. The Niners, okay, they traded DeForest Buckner, which again, I like that trade for both teams. I think the Niners got the 13th pick in the draft, and I think they did that to get something they need a little more, whether it's a receiver, whether it is a corner. They did it for something they're going to need more, because they have enough pass rush depth as it is. Their defensive line is still very good. Even some of the rotational guys are very good on that team. So I think that's why they did it. I feel like they're going to try to get a receiver at that pick, maybe even trade up, or if CeeDee Lamb or somebody like that falls, they're going to end up with one of those guys. I think that's why they did it. Or a corner. Maybe they trade up for somebody like Okudah if he falls. Again, maybe they could draft somebody like a CJ Henderson or a Christian Fulton, because those are the two biggest needs, really. But I think that's why they did it, and they have another pick to do that. So maybe they trade the 2-1s, they can go up even further in the draft. So I like that move for both teams, even though I think Buckner's a really good player. Armstead, 5 years, $85 million. I think they overpaid for him a little bit. I like him as a player. He's a versatile guy who can play both inside and outside on the defensive line. Good power rusher. $21 million and $21 million a year and 48.5, maybe a little much though. And especially when they have to pay other guys coming up, because they're a very young team, that could make it harder, especially with the contract already for Garoppolo. Small moves beyond that. Ben Garland, 1 year, $2.25 million. He was a center with Atlanta when Shanahan was there. I think that's why they did it. And Travis Benjamin, same kind of thing as what they already have. Just a bunch of small speed receivers that can also be running backs. In the draft, like I said earlier, receiver and corner, I think is really the areas they're going to look in. If CeeDee Lamb somehow falls to 13, don't be surprised if that's where they're picking. Maybe interior offensive line as well. But otherwise, I think it's really going to be receivers and corners. It's a deep corner draft. You've heard me list the guys already for how deep it is. So that's the Niners. And lastly, the LA Rams. They don't have much to work with at all, whether it comes to cap space or draft picks. So they need a lot. And it's because they've spent a lot of money in certain player areas, and they haven't been able to create holes. I like the move for Leonard Floyd, 1 year, $10 million. Kind of a prove-it deal for him. He had a down year last year, but still is a good young pass rusher. Could be a good hybrid and outside linebacker type. Ashawn Robinson, kind of a weird fit for the Rams, but again, he's a good pass rushing type defensive tackle. They bring back Michael Brockers, and they re-sign Andrew Whitworth, which is key too. 3 years, though, which is surprising for somebody, I think, 37 years old.
Well, they signed him for 3 years, but he's not staying with them for 3 years. Probably stay there for another year. If he has a good season, he'll stay there for another year. But if he has a bad year, he'll be done.
All right, so the Rams, again, draft pick-wise, they're not going to be able to do much. I think they have 2/3. I think that's the first spot they pick in the draft because they traded for
By the way,
first
that Leonard
second.
Floyd move was a great move.
I like that move, too. Back end of the draft, I mean, you have to hope maybe that there's some good interior offensive linemen because, again, their tackles aren't terrible. Again, Whitworth's really good, and Rob Havenstein, when he's healthy, is not bad either. But, again, the interior is where it's a big issue for them, and we've seen the Rams' offense get exposed pretty badly when you can pass rush them from the interior. It's not the same.
I don't think they care about that, Speedy. Just go into why and what they need to do to make them a better team. That's it.
So interior line, I think, and linebacker is the other one. They lost Corey Littleton, and their run defense has still been really bad. Their secondary is okay. They could probably live with it for now in terms of their safeties, but the linebackers are definitely where they're going to have to help. So they're going to have to hope to find gems.
So you got them?
Yep.
All right. Who do we have first?
Arizona.
The Arizona Cardinals. You know, it's interesting. Speedy was mentioning, well, What did they do this offseason? The biggest acquisition, I believe, this offseason in the NFL, besides Tom Brady, was the trade of DeAndre Hopkins. David Johnson going over there to the Texans, and DeAndre Hopkins going to the Arizona Cardinals, giving Kyler Murray a weapon that he's never had, a weapon who I believe could be the best wide receiver in football right now when healthy. And in the prime of his career, I think it was a terrible trade. I think the Texans will regret getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins. But it was a good move. Bringing back Kenyon Drake, who I believe was one of the best running backs in the second half of the season, going to Cardinals. I really think he fits that offense. He fits that mold. They need to have offensive line help. That's what they need. That's been their weakness. So that's where I think they go. Devin Kennard is a good player, good linebacker, not a great linebacker. We'll see what he does with that 3-year deal. I think it was a valuable contract, a value contract. We'll see what he is. But that's what I think about the Cardinals. The next team.
Oh, you want to do the draft for the Cardinals?
No, I just said they need offensive line help. I don't go over and over again with what you do, Speed.
All right, so Seattle.
You take too long and you go into too much depth. We're trying to get through this. It takes up the whole show. The Seattle Seahawks. Philip Dorsett, wide receiver from the New England Patriots. Nothing big. Will he fit with Russell Wilson? He does fit the Russell Wilson mold, the small, fast wide receiver. Could he blossom with Russell Wilson? Absolutely. We'll see what he does with Seattle's offense. Seattle's offense has been very, very multiple dimensional over the years. Bruce Irvin, expected to sign with the Seattle Seahawks. Bruce Irvin, his best part of his career was with Seattle when he was drafted. Maybe it really elevates him. But the big acquisition this offseason was Greg Olsen. I think he's going to be a steal right now. 1-year deal. I don't know why Carolina didn't bring him back. He's been one of the best tight ends in football for the last, 5-6 years. Can't stay healthy. He's had problems. But if he stays healthy, even though Seattle does not, and Russell Wilson over the years has not really thrown the ball very well against two tight ends or top tight ends, Greg Olsen, I think, is a different player than Jimmy Graham. So I like that move. As far as what Seattle needs to do, pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. This is what they've been lacking the last couple of years. They bring in Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney did not do the job. He's no longer going to fit with Seattle. That's why Seattle is not going to re-sign him unless they get him on the cheap. So that's where I think they should go. Next team.
And right there, the Niners.
The Niners, I think the Niners made some mistakes this offseason. Not bringing Buckner back didn't make any sense. I understand they brought in a first-round draft pick out of that, but you don't know what that first-round draft pick is going to translate into. So you know what Buckner is. You know what this Buckner, right?
DeForest Buckner, yeah.
Buckner. I said Buckner. Buckner, I think Buckner fit very, very well in this defense because Joey Bosa coming to this team, changed the defense, changed the defensive line for the better. I think this was one of the best defensive line, if not the best defensive line in football last year. Why would you get rid of that when it took you all the way to the Super Bowl? It made no sense. But they decided to go that way, and Travis Benjamin is just another fill-in position. They really didn't do anything this offseason that really stood out. As far as the draft is concerned, wide receiver is the important position they need to look for. They went after Emmanuel Sanders. They gave up a lot of draft stock because of him. He really didn't do what he was supposed to do in the Super Bowl or in the NFC title game. So I think that was a bad trade. So that's where I think they need to go. Wide receiver is the most important position for them. And what do we got right now?
The Rams.
The Rams. The big acquisition they made was Leonard Floyd. I think he's a good edge rusher. I was very surprised Chicago let him go. This guy was drafted 2 or 3 years ago. I do believe he has elite talent in the right scheme. Wade Phillips is no longer there. It might hurt his development. Andrew Whitworth, very interesting move, bringing him back for 3 years. The only way he was going to go back to the Rams is if he got this contract. Even though this contract, $12.5 million guaranteed, they can get rid of that contract after next year if he really isn't the player they think he is. Where do they go? Offensive line. This is what this team needs. Andrew Whitworth is not getting any younger. Bring in an offensive lineman, a left tackle, a right tackle that you can transition to a left tackle if he's a right tackle in the league for the next couple of years. So that's the big position I think the Rams need to go after.